The anime adaptation of AoT is really precise and took care to not miss anything that is important. Let it be so minor, like the little bit of steam that comes out of Eren's head here after he hurt himself by the ODM gear test. That to us back then only seemed like nothing, just a cartoony design choice. Or in the same scene, going to Reiner with the camera when the armored titan is mentioned. But they got not everything on camera, of course. If Isayama does not tell them personally about every single important subtle detail, they had to miss stuff, which you only understand as the story progresses and you go back then later and see, okay. In this video, I will go over 3 secret foreshadowings that were actually in the first chapter that are hinting on stuff that is going to happen not sooner than 100 chapters later. The last one I never saw anyone talk about on Reddit or something else. I noticed it myself back then when episode 79 released. But let's start with the weakest one. Itterashai Eren, which roughly translates to "See you later, Eren." It is a scene you most likely are familiar with, but not from the first episode. Instead, from the second last, to be correct. The foreshadowing here seems pretty clear. It's the long dream Eren had at the very beginning, ending with the words, "See you later, Eren," which foreshadows the ending. That this actually not makes so much sense as a foreshadowing for the ending is another topic for another day. The thing is just that they did not adapt the scene in the anime for the dream in episode 1. Instead, they expanded on that dream, showing a lot of other stuff, like the room where Zeke and the Azumabito are going to talk together, or Berthold's dead eyes. But not this particular scene. So, as they realized this was missing, they gave it to us in the anime at the start of the first special, to make things rounded. Which kind of always got me a weird feeling behind in the gut, because it seems pretty cheap to set up a foreshadowing for the ending so close near the actual ending. That would be no problem if it wouldn't use the scene we already got in the first episode and then kind of gave it a new meaning. It felt like they had to say, remember this foreshadowing from episode 1? Yeah, here in the second last episode, we want to tell you it was especially about this scene here. We forgot to mention it in episode 1 back then, sorry. Which just seemed weak compared to the masterclass foreshadowing AoT offers usually. But luckily, this was an anime-only mistake, and thus makes it alright again. Because in the manga, it was already there from the beginning. With that out of the way, let's move on to actual stuff you never saw if you did not read the manga and were really patient by it. Starting with a more subtle detail, but still interesting thing, and then going to the big one at the end. Carla says, "Do you know how many people have died because they dared to venture outside the walls?" And suddenly, the panel besides that panel is a thoughtful Grisha saying, "Nothing, ... There's actually no reason to show us this little panel here in the left bottom corner. Carla says that, and that's all. Why show us Grisha's face exactly to that statement? Back then, it seemed like Grisha thinks, oh yeah, she might be right or something. But that contradicts the fact that Grisha is then raising his voice for Eren's side and not for Carla's. So this seems not convincing. I am myself pretty convinced this is about the fact that Grisha is the only guy that survived from his entire group outside the walls. Everyone else died there, as Carla said, without knowing it. Though technically they are at this point still mostly alive, just as pure titans. But you get what I mean. If you look at the panel where Grisha says, "Eren, when I get back home, I'll show you what's inside the basement that I've been keeping secret all that time. We do not see him from the front or a little diagonal like most of the time in mangas when we see people talk or in general in movies and stories. We see this weird looking profile. And at first you could say that's just a coincidence. But why suddenly on this panel? And why is it clearly shown in the panel before that his body is facing towards the door frame? Considering that, he would have had to look back with his face, like he's doing in that panel before. But no, in this panel he looks directly in front of him. We can see it on the positioning of his chest. And we somehow cannot see what this in front of him exactly is. Because the panel just cuts away. We only see Grisha's face, nothing more, not what is in front of him. And on top, his eyes are covered in these shadowy manga lines that are nowhere else in the scene, most likely to hide that he actually looks on something the same height as him, and not down, what he would have to do if he looked to young Eren. To me, this seems as the perfect sweet spot, to be honest, between making a foreshadowing but not being too obviously weird in that panel, that we already back then knew we had to remember this weird scene where Grisha is looking to the side instead of to young Eren he is talking to. And now to the big reveal for all you who did not already realize. He's not talking to young Eren here. Not only to young Eren. Because in chapter 121 or episode 79, Memories of the Future, where Zeke and Eren travel around Grisha's memories, in exactly that scene at exactly this quote, it is revealed that Grisha indeed looked to the side where adult Eren was standing at this moment. When I realized that back then, when I read through chapter 1 again, this was insane. What a brilliant foreshadowing. So in conclusion of today, it is just crazy how many little foreshadowings are scattered around this entire story. And though so many of them got adapted in the anime, because the anime was really precise about the manga, there were still not only some missing, but already in the first episode, at least 3 kind of important things missing. That just marks again how crazy the foreshadowing of AoT is, but I know that you all are already well aware of that, but this is still like on another level mind-blowing. 3 foreshadowings in episode 1 that were missing in episode 1 because they are only in the manga. That's something else. That's it for today. Like, comment, subscribe, tell me your opinion. And with that, I wish you all a great